Indigenous languages appear to be disappearing at a concerning rate around the world. Current data indicates that at least 43% of the world's spoken languages are being forgotten, with indigenous languages making a significant part. According to ONIC, National Indigenous Organization of Colombia, there are 65 indigenous languages in the country. Nearly one-third of them are at a critical risk of disappearing, and only 3 of them, including Nasa Yui, are spoken by more than 50,000 people. This is the reality that Juan Pablo Cameo seeks to change. 2 years ago, in Caldono, Colombia, Juan Pablo and other neighbors started a communications network that enabled them to provide internet access to remote rural areas and disseminate content in their mother tongue. That's how Joxah Wejxia Castle, Winds Net, in Nasa Yui, came to be. Currently, Joxah Wejxia Castle has about 200 families subscribed to their internet service and provides a tool that allows communities to preserve the use of their language. With support from other project partners, Juan Pablo leveraged this new communication tool to produce and disseminate original communication materials in Nasa Yui. 1. The word leveraged, in the last sentence of the text, can be correctly understood as took advantage of. Correct. The term leveraged is often used to mean used to maximum advantage or took advantage of in contexts like this. Juan Pablo used the communication tool to its full potential to produce and share materials in Nasa Yui. 2. According to the text, the disappearance of indigenous languages is a worrying fact because they represent almost 43% of the world's spoken languages. Incorrect. The text states that 43% of the world's languages are being forgotten, but it does not say that indigenous languages alone make up 43% of all spoken languages. It highlights that indigenous languages form a significant part of the languages at risk. 3. According to the text, Joxah Wejxia Castle is a rural communications network that aims to promote the spread of content in Nasa Yui. Correct. The text describes Joxah Wejxia Castle as a communication network providing internet access to rural areas and enabling the dissemination of materials in Nasa Yui to help preserve the language. Internet coverage in the European Union, EU, is impressive, standing at 100%, however, numbers on de facto usage, 85%, broadband take-up, 78%, users with at least basic digital skills, 58%, next-generation access coverage providing at least 30 megabits per second 86%, and 5G readiness, 21%. Cloud the picture. The significance of these circumstances does not only lie in the economic implications but also in the severe consequences for the individual and the society. People without adequate internet access are missing out on means of participation and opportunities that have become part of everyday life. Countless contributions have been published on socio-economic inequalities relating to access to, use of or impact of ICTs, information and communication technologies, known as the digital divides. These divides will only deepen, as disconnected citizens are likely to miss out on long-term benefits of innovation, information society, and modernization. The coronavirus pandemic exacerbated the social inequalities related to insufficient connectivity. Privileged users experienced dropped calls and disrupted downloads, while disadvantaged users were left with no access at all or with makeshift solutions. 4. The adjective, makeshift, in the last sentence of the text, is a synonym for obsolete. Incorrect. The term makeshift refers to something temporary or improvised, not obsolete. It implies a stopgap solution rather than something outdated or no longer in use. 5. Digital divide can be understood as the lack of long-term stable connection to the Internet. Incorrect. The text describes the digital divide as inequalities in access, use, and impact of ICTs, which encompasses more than just a lack of stable Internet connection. It includes broader socio-economic disparities related to digital technology. 6. The percentage of actual Internet users in the EU is clouded by the numbers on 5G preparedness. Incorrect. The text mentions that the numbers on various factors, including 5G readiness, cloud the picture, but it does not directly state that 5G readiness specifically clouds the percentage of actual Internet users. The factors mentioned collectively complicate the broader understanding of Internet coverage and usage. 7. Lack of satisfactory Internet access results in exclusion of people from benefits related to digital technology. Correct. The text explicitly states that inadequate Internet access leads to people missing out on opportunities and participation in modern society, highlighting the exclusion caused by insufficient connectivity. Despite the tricky and life-threatening relationship between Paleolithic humans and the megafauna that comprised so much of their environment, 20th-century scholars tended to claim cave art as evidence of an unalloyed triumph for our species. It was a great spiritual symbol of a time when man had just emerged from a purely zoological existence, when instead of being dominated by animals, he began to dominate them. But the childlike and highly stylized stick figures found in caves do not radiate triumph. By the standards of our own time, they are excessively self-effacing and, compared to the animals portrayed around them, pathetically weak. While 20th-century archaeologists tended to solemnize prehistoric art as magico-religious or shamanic, today's more secular viewers sometimes detect a vein of sheer silliness. India's Mesolithic rock art portrays few human stick figures. Those that are portrayed have been described by modern viewers as comical, animalized, and grotesque. As Judith Thurman wrote about the artists, despite their penchant for naturalism, rarely did they choose to depict human beings, and then did so with a crudeness that smacks of mockery. But who are they mocking, other than themselves and, by extension, their distant descendants, ourselves? Of course, our reactions to Paleolithic art may bear no connection to the intentions or feelings of the artists. Yet there are reasons to believe that Paleolithic people had a sense of humor not all that dissimilar from our own. 8. The text stresses the difference between the opinions of cave artists and of modern art scholars in terms of the concept of the artistic genius. Incorrect. The text does not delve into the opinions of the cave artists themselves, which are speculative at best, but instead focuses on contrasting modern perspectives, including those of 20th-century scholars and today's viewers. It does not explicitly discuss artistic genius in this context. 9. The author sides with those who take cave art to be a great spiritual symbol, as stated in the first paragraph. Incorrect. The author critiques the view held by 20th-century scholars that cave art represents a great spiritual symbol. Instead, the author highlights alternative interpretations, including humor and mockery, suggesting skepticism toward the earlier magico-religious or triumphant perspectives. 10. The text suggests that 20th-century scholars had an erroneous perspective on how cave art should be viewed. Correct. The text contrasts the solemn interpretations of 20th-century scholars with more contemporary, secular views. It implies that the earlier perspective may have overemphasized the spiritual or triumphant aspects of the art, failing to recognize other possible interpretations, such as humor. 11. The author concludes that cave artists depicted humans as weak to show the preponderance megafauna had in those days. Incorrect. While the text notes that human figures appear weak compared to the animals, it does not conclude that this was an intentional choice by the artists to emphasize the dominance of megafauna. Instead, it raises the possibility that these depictions might reflect humor or self-mockery rather than a deliberate statement about the relative power of humans and animals. 12. In the last sentence of the text, inserting a comma immediately after the first occurrence of that would make the sentence grammatically incorrect. Incorrect. Adding a comma after that breaks the logical connection between the main clause, there are reasons to believe that, and the subordinate clause, Paleolithic people had a sense of humor. This creates a grammatically fragmented structure. 13. In the expressions, unalloyed triumph, first sentence of the text, and sheer silliness, first sentence of the second paragraph, the adjectives, unalloyed, and sheer, convey similar meanings. Correct. Both unalloyed and sheer are used to emphasize purity or completeness in the respective contexts. Unalloyed triumph refers to a triumph free from any dilution, while sheer silliness suggests complete and unmitigated silliness. 14. The last sentence of the second paragraph could be rewritten, maintaining its original meaning and correctness, as, accordingly, Judith Thurman has already written that cave artists, notwithstanding their respect for naturalistic portraits, have an aversion to painting human beings with traces of crudeness, which suggests mockery. Incorrect. The proposed rewrite changes the original meaning. The original sentence suggests that the cave artists depicted humans in a crude manner that appears mocking, whereas the rewritten version incorrectly implies that the artists avoided such portrayals. This alteration shifts the intended interpretation. 15. By stating that the human figures in cave art are self-effacing, last sentence of the first paragraph, the author means that humans were virtually absent characters in cave paintings. Incorrect. Self-effacing does not mean virtually absent. Instead, it refers to the modest or understated way humans were depicted compared to animals in the paintings. The figures may be present but portrayed in a way that diminishes their significance or prominence. This book wants to show the newcomer the lie of the land without confusing him with details. In writing it I thought first and foremost of readers in their teens. But I have never believed that books for young people should differ from books for adults except for the fact that they must reckon with the most exacting class of critics, critics who are quick to detect and resent any trace of pretentious jargon or bogus sentiment. I know from experience that these are the vices which may render people suspicious of all writings. I have striven to use plain language even at the risk of sounding casual or unprofessional. I hope that no reader will attribute my decision to get along with a minimum of the art historian's conventional terms to any desire on my part of talking down to him. Apart from this decision, I have tried to follow a number of more specific self-imposed rules, such as limiting myself to real works of art and cutting out anything which might merely be interesting as a specimen of taste or fashion. This decision entailed a considerable sacrifice of literary effects. Praise is so much duller than criticism, and the inclusion of some amusing monstrosities might have offered some light relief. Thus, while I do not claim that all the works illustrated represent the highest standard of perfection, I did make an effort not to include anything which I considered to be without a peculiar merit of its own. A second rule also demanded a little self-denial. I vowed to resist any temptation to be original in my selection, lest the well-known masterpieces be crowded out by my own personal favorites. This book, after all, is not intended merely as an anthology of beautiful things, it is meant for those who look for bearings in a new field, and for them the familiar appearance of apparently hackneyed examples may serve as welcome landmarks. One more rule I have followed. When in doubt I have always preferred to discuss a work which I had seen in the original rather than one I knew only from photographs. I should have liked to make this an absolute rule, but I did not want the reader to be penalized by the accidents of travel restrictions which sometimes dog the life of the art lover. 16. As used in the third sentence of the first paragraph, the expression, most exacting class of critics refers to critics who worry too much about being correct. Incorrect. The most exacting class of critics refers to young readers who are highly perceptive and critical of pretentiousness or insincerity, not those overly concerned with correctness. 17. In the fragment, most exacting class of critics, critics who are quick to, third sentence of the first paragraph, omitting the second occurrence of the word critics, would maintain the grammar correctness of the sentence. Correct. Omitting the second critics would not disrupt the grammar or clarity of the sentence, as the clause still correctly identifies the subject. 18. By stating that he wants to show the reader the lie of the land, first sentence of the text, the author means that he wants to inform the reader of the rules he followed in writing the book. Incorrect. The lie of the land refers to providing an overview or orientation of the subject matter, not specifically the rules followed in writing the book. 19. In the fragment I have never believed that books for young people should differ from books for adults except for the fact that they must reckon with the most exacting class of critics, third sentence of the first paragraph, the referent for the pronoun, they, is, adults. Incorrect. The pronoun, they, refers to books for young people, not adults. 20. In the last sentence of the text, the word dog has a similar meaning to trouble. Correct. The word dog here means trouble or plague, as in the phrase, dog the life of the art lover. 21. The excerpt, lest the well-known masterpieces be crowded out by my own personal favorites, second sentence of the second paragraph, could be, maintaining the coherence and correctness of the original, correctly replaced with, to avoid leaving the well-known masterpieces out to fill the book with my own personal favorites. Correct. The rewritten sentence conveys the same idea, avoiding the exclusion of well-known masterpieces in favor of the author's personal preferences. 22. It can be correctly concluded from the excerpt, praise is so much duller than criticism, ninth sentence of the first paragraph, that the author wishes to write a book criticizing what he considers monstrosities. Incorrect. The author explicitly avoided including monstrosities, even though they might have provided light relief. He aimed to focus on works with merit. 23. In, for them the familiar appearance, third sentence of second paragraph, them refers to the people the book is meant for, those who look for bearings in a new field. Correct. Them indeed refers to the target audience of the book, those seeking guidance in understanding art. Aside from the difficulties of operating a decidedly multinational staff organization, once it is formed, the problem of reconciling the principle of equitable geographical distribution of recruits with that of securing the highest standards of efficiency, competence, and integrity, is a formidable one. This delicate task was politically imposed upon the League of Nations Secretary-General, and is constitutionally required of his counterpart in the United Nations. For better or for worse, recruitment policy cannot be based exclusively upon the criterion of the individual's personal qualifications. In the field of international employment, the relevant irrelevancy is not, whom do you know, but where are you from? From a strictly administrative point of view, there is some positive value in securing broad nationality distribution, even at the expense of sheer quality. For some purposes, a slightly incompetent man's nationality may make him more useful than a more expert civil servant of inappropriate nationality. For the most part, however, the charter principle of geographical distribution is a concession to political necessity. It licenses a kind of international spoils system in which states seek to nourish their national self-esteem by securing an adequate quota of international jobs for their citizens. Ironically, perhaps, because it is politically necessary, it is also politically and administratively desirable. What shall it profit an international organization to maintain its administrative purity and lose its own members or their political support? 24. The author of the text considers that, more than the competence of the applicants or their nationality, it is their political connections, who they know, that has the greatest impact on their chance of being recruited for international jobs. Incorrect. The text explicitly contrasts, whom do you know, political connections, with, where are you from, nationality, stating that the latter is the key determinant in international recruitment. 25. According to the text, reconciling the principle of equitable geographical distribution of recruits with that of securing the highest standards of efficiency, competence, and integrity was a legal obligation incumbent both on the Secretary-General of the League of Nations and the Secretary-General of the United Nations. Incorrect. The statement is wrong because the text specifies that the obligation was politically imposed on the League of Nations Secretary-General, not a legal one, whereas it was constitutionally required, i.e. a legal obligation, for the UN Secretary-General. 26. The fragment even at the expense of sheer quality, last sentence of the second paragraph, could be, without harming the coherence of the text, replaced with even if this entails the choice of less qualified applicants. Correct. The replacement accurately preserves the meaning of the original phrase, as, expense of sheer quality, directly implies choosing less qualified applicants. 27. The excerpt it licenses a kind of international spoils system, could be, without altering the meaning of the sentence, replaced with it spoils the international system. Incorrect. The phrase, licenses a kind of international spoils system, means that it permits or justifies a system where positions are distributed as political favors. Replacing it with, it spoils the international system alters the meaning by suggesting harm to the system itself, rather than describing the allocation mechanism. In the middle of July, Roger was making his first ministerial speech. I did not need reminding, having drafted enough of them, how much speeches mattered, to parliamentary bosses, to any kind of tycoon. Draft after draft, the search for the supreme, the impossible, the more than Flaubertian perfection, the scrutiny for any phrase that said more than it ought to say, so that each speech at the end was bound, by the law of official inexplicitness, to be more porridge-like than when it started out in its first draft. I had always hated writing drafts for other people, and nowadays got out of it. To Hector, to Douglas, it was part of the job, which they took with their usual patience, their usual lack of egotism. When a minister crossed out their sharp, clear English and went in for a literary composition of his own, they gave a wintry smile and let it stand. 28. The text suggests that, when their original drafts were modified by a minister, Hector and Douglas would stand up to him and insist on retaining the sharp, clear English of the original. Incorrect. The text suggests that Hector and Douglas did not stand up to the minister but accepted the changes with a wintry smile and let it stand, indicating a lack of resistance. 29. In the first sentence of the text, the verb making is being used with the sense of writing. Incorrect. In the first sentence, making refers to delivering or giving the speech, not writing it. 30. The narrator of the text considers that the process of rewriting the speech multiple times contributes to its becoming more focused and direct. Incorrect. The narrator implies that the rewriting process makes the speech less focused and direct, becoming more porridge-like rather than clearer.